So Khadija was a noble lady from Quraysh. She was a rich lady, she was a mature lady, and she come from the really good families of Quraysh. Her first husband of Khadija, he died and he inherited a huge amount of money, like a big fortune. So she became a rich lady. And then she married again and she had another husband, but also she separated. At that point of her life, Khadija, she was around 40 years old. She was a noble from the noble families. She was well established. She had businesses, and everybody wanted to get close to her because she is from the Asad clan. But at that point of her life, she was looking for more fulfillment, for something different. She's already had 3 kids from their 2 first marriages, and she's running her business. Now, to run her business, she has a business of trade. Of course, as a woman, she wouldn't be leading the trade herself. She would be hiring men to trade on her behalf. So she will hire men to go and against a commission, they will trade, they will come back, they will report to her, and she was very well established. Now she's heard of this guy called Muhammad. After all, he was a cousin. He wasn't really that far away from her. He was a cousin. In fact, Abu Talib, the uncle of Muhammad, came to her and said, "Hey, Khadija, we've heard you're hiring men to go and do this trade. What about our nephew, Muhammad? He's a good guy. Try him. He's good." So Khadija thought, well, she's heard good things about him. He's been known to being like decent, loyal, decent, trustworthy. So why not? At that point, Muhammad was, as we left him in the last time, he was in his early 20s. He was actually 24. He has just, we saw him how he moved from being an orphan to going to his uncle, to his grandfather's home, and then go to his uncle's home. He worked as a shepherd, and then he started as a camel boy in the caravans. Camel boy, just go with them, serve the travelers, serve the merchants. But then he kept on progressing, and at some point he started to get a little bit more significant work, like helping the merchants in their trade. And at one moment, he actually became entrusted with a caravan. So he was leading the caravan, small caravans here and there, against a commission. So basically, he was a free agent. He didn't have a capital to run business on his own, but he would be trading for others like a contractor. So Abu Talib now went, he saw Khadija has this business. He told her, hey, try Muhammad. So Khadija, she was hiring a lot of men. She would hire Muhammad to go on a trip to Yemen to guide one of her caravans. And he did. And he went there and everything was well. He came back. He made a decent profit. He reported to her. He was trustworthy. He took his share. And he came back and he reported to her about the mission. So he sat down. He told her about his transactions, what he sold, what he did. And Khadija was listening to him, but she wasn't just listening about his transactions and his business. She was actually noticing the man himself. She noticed something about him. She was intrigued. And then she would ask him to go for another trade. She wanted to give him another trade. Now she gave him a bigger trade to Syria. And she'd get her servant boy, Maysara, to go with him to observe him along the way. She told him, go with Muhammad, help him, but report me back how he's handling this caravan. Muhammad went to this trip to Syria and he did well. He sold the merchandise. He made a decent profit. He came back. He reported everything cleanly and everything well. And then Maysara asked about Khadija asked her Maysara, and he reported good things about him. What he reported, that he was a trustworthy man. Maybe he was dealing well with the people. He was polite. He was respectful. He was good in the business. He was good in dealing. He didn't mistreat anybody bad. Maybe he reported to her that he was serious in his job, that he was always decent with others. Maybe he reported that at night, as a young man going to Syria, he wouldn't be doing, what young men typically do at this age, maybe go and get drunk or go to prostitution or do this kind of stuff, which is for him as a young man traveling alone with the salary, he could very well indulge in that. He reported to her a different picture of a good and serious and trustworthy man, and she was even more intrigued. And she had an eye on Muhammad. She called her friend, Nufaisa. And her friend Nufaisa came and she's like, hey, Nufaisa, what do you think of this guy, Muhammad? And Nufaisa was like, hey, come on, you have a crush on him, don't you? And Khadija was shy and she said, yeah, what do you think? But he will never propose because he's so young and he's poor. He will never propose. And Nufaisa and Khadija will laugh, and Nufaisa will tell Khadija, leave it on me. I have a plot, I have a plan. And they did like ladies' plan to test what Muhammad will be open to the idea of marriage to Khadija or not. So they agreed together on a plan, and Nufaisa will go to Muhammad. She didn't say that she's coming from Khadija. She went to Muhammad and is like, hey, Muhammad, how are you? How's everything? How's business? How's life? How was your trip? Everything's good. And Muhammad was answering. And then she was like, Muhammad, what about marriage? Don't you think about marriage one day? And Muhammad was like, yeah. He was just heartbroken by his by his cousin who he couldn't marry her. So he was like, yeah, I'd love to get married, but my condition I don't have yet the right condition. And Nufaisa was like, what if I tell you, would you be interested in nobility and beauty and also abundance and money? And Muhammad was like, whoa, yes, sure. Who wouldn't be interested in that? But who's that? And she's like, Khadija. And he's like, Khadija? But she would never really accept, like, I don't even think about it. Like, she's older than me, she's richer than me, I don't have the condition. And Nufaisa was like, don't worry. If you're interested, I can talk to her. And Muhammad was like, all right, let's try. Of course, Nufaisa had already agreed with this with Khadija, and Nufaisa will go to Khadija and she will tell her, Muhammad is interested. And it was like, great. So then Khadija will invite Muhammad to her home and they will have a talk, and Khadija will tell him that she respects him because of his character, because of his trustworthiness, because of the truthfulness of his speech, and she offered herself to him. And that was very unusual at the time for a woman to be proposing to a man, and an older woman as well proposing to a man, but that's what would happen, and Muhammad will agree. And of course they needed now to make it a formal marriage. So Muhammad will go to his uncles, they will send Hamza and Abu Talib, and to go to the uncles of Khadija to make the marriage official. So the uncles will come, they will sit in a room. There was the uncle of Khadija, but also the cousin of Khadija, if you remember him, Waraka ibn Nawfal, the very famous Hanif, the Christian Hanif was also there. And the uncles of Abu Talib, they were like, we present you, we are coming with our best nephew in the world, Muhammad. He is a descendant of Ismail, a descendant of Abraham. They were so proud of their ancestry of Abraham and Ismail. They presented that. And of course, the uncle of Khadija agreed, and a marriage happened. And that was a new phase in the life of Muhammad. He was now 25 years old. He would move to Khadija's home. It's like a whole new chapter will begin with him. 25 years, he will live with Khadija for 25 more years. So he would live with her from age 25 to age 50. So that's really a huge foundational period in his life, if not the longest one streak of period with Khadija's household. And of course, everything changed with him. We saw that prior to that, he was between his uncle and then his grandfather and then his uncle. He lived at Abu Talib from 8 to 25, and now a new chapter will start with him. A chapter full of blessings, full of harmony, full of love, but not without its own share of grief and losses as well. The marriage starts, and they would go on in the couple in the next few years to have many kids. They will have actually 6 kids in the next 10 years together, 4 girls and 2 boys. But then the first boy, Al-Qasim, died when he was less than 2 years old. He got sick and he died. And a few years later, he got another boy, Abdullah. And also, even before reaching 2 years old, Abdullah will die in his infancy. Muhammad was left with the 4 daughters. In a society that so much glorifies male heritage. And you know, at that time, if you remember, even the woman, they will actually be burying them alive if they, you know, because they would consider them as a burden. So honor for people was to have male descendants, and for Muhammad to lose his two boys was definitely a psychological blow. And so much so that even later on, when he will start his da'wah and he will start to face people, they will mock him for being a cut-off man. They will call it in Arabic al-abtar. One time when he started the da'wah, he will be meeting the Qurayshi to tell them about the one God, and they would say, who are you? Nobody will even remember you when you die. You are an abtar. Anta abtar. No, there's nobody to take it from you when you die. And this is where the famous verse of the Quran came at that time. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. Oh, we have given you a lot of goods and abundance and goodness. In فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. Pray for your God and sacrifice. Inna sha'inaka huwa al-abtar. The one who is criticizing you is the abtar, is the cut off. And how true these verses are when we see that the memory of Muhammad never died. We're speaking about him even now, while the memory of that guy, the Qurashi, who was so proud of having a couple of kids, died. And the verse of God that was revealed to him is immortalized now in the Quran. So he lost his two boys, and it was definitely a grief for him. Definitely it was a blow. But then, as if he was to replace those boys, he will have one boy coming from Khadija. A very interesting story. Remember his name, Zayd. Zayd was a boy that Khadija owned as a slave man, as a slave boy. Zayd was actually from a faraway tribe. He was from a noble family, not a Qurashi family, but he was from a decent family, but from another tribe. And he was one day traveling with his mother, and he was attacked by a different tribe. So they stole him, they stole their goods, and they sold him in the slave market in Mecca. So he was taken as a very young boy, stolen from his mother, sold in Suq Uqaz in Mecca. Who bought him in Mecca? The brother of Khadija. He bought 4 slaves at that time, servants, and he came back home. He invited Khadija. Khadija, which one you would want? She picked up Zayd. So she took Zayd with her home as part of her servants. When she married Muhammad, she will offer him Zayd as his own slave. But Muhammad will really treat Zayd more as a son than as a servant or as a slave. Now this boy, his parents went crazy, his father went crazy. He wanted to look for him everywhere. He will make poems, he will send news, he will ask everybody, if you just see my son, can somebody tell me where I can get him? Few years later, some people from this Zayd's tribe will come to Mecca for pilgrimage, and they will notice that boy. Zayd actually was from a much darker complexity because he's coming more from the south, and they noticed that boy, they talk to him, and they realized this is Zayd ibn Haritha, the son of Haritha. They went straight to his father, Haritha, we found your son. He's like owned by a Qurashi in Mecca. And of course, his father just took straight away. He took his brother with him. He took a lot of money and he moved straight to Mecca in order to ransom his son back. He arrived to Mecca. He went straight to Muhammad. Oh, Muhammad, I heard that my son is with you. I want him back. That's the story. That's money. I offer you anything. Give me back my son. Now, Muhammad at that time, he had already a bond with this kid. He was reluctant, but then he said to him, you know, I have a better deal for you. Let's bring Zayd. If he chooses, and we give him the choice, he wants to go back with you or he wants to stay here with me. If he wants to go back with you, he can return for free and I won't take any money from you. But if he wants to stay here, I cannot let him go. So the father thought like, sure, no problem. That's a great deal. Let's call Zayd. And Zayd came to that place, to the room. He saw his father, he saw his uncle, and they asked him, Muhammad asked him, Zayd, they are coming to take you. You recognize them? Yes. You want to go back with them? He said, no, I want to stay. His father was incensed. Zayd, are you lost your mind? Are you crazy? You want to stay in slavery rather than go back to freedom? You want to stay with a stranger man rather than go back with your own father, your own blood? And Zayd will answer, oh father, What I've seen from this man makes me not want ever to leave him. And Muhammad was so touched with that. He was so touched that in order to honor the father of Zayd and in order to honor Zayd, he went with them all straight away to the Kaaba. He took Zayd with him. He took his hand and he called everybody and he said, hey, everybody in Mecca, I want to declare that Zayd from now on is a free man. He is no longer a slave. He's a free man. He is my son. I adopt him as a son. From now on, he is called Zayd ibn Muhammad and he will even inherit me. So he raised the status of Zayd to a free man adopted by Muhammad himself. And so the father of Zayd and the uncle, at least they weren't as bitter as before because they saw that their son was honored, their son was free, and they thought that, you know what, maybe it's a good thing that we have a son growing in Mecca with this, you know, in this pilgrimage place with the Qurayshi. He could serve us later in terms of connection with his other brothers or cousins. So in a way they were honored and they felt good about it and they went back, and Zayd will remain as a son with Muhammad. That was a very significant. As I said, Zayd was from a darker complexity. He was short with also a flat nose, which at that time there was racism in Mecca. And at that time, people will glorify more the Arab stature of the big nose and the lighter skin. So in a way, by adopting his son, he was also moving a step towards non-discrimination and non-discrimination towards other ethnicities when Muhammad will adopt Zayd as his own son. The second son that he will get was a boy that will be known later in history, Ali ibn Abi Taleb. How? When Muhammad went to Khadija's home and his condition became good, he would then now go to, he thought that, you know what, let me help my uncle Abu Talib. Abu Talib has so many kids and he was a poor. So Muhammad went to his other uncle Abbas and he said, Abbas, let's go to Abu Talib and help him with his kids. We can raise his kids for him. We can choose some of his kids and raise them. So they agreed. They went to Abu Talib and they said, oh, we offer you support. We can raise your kids for you. And Abu Talib said, yep, if you leave me just Talib and Aqil, do whatever you want. Just leave me these two, the big ones, and do whatever you want. So Muhammad will then take the young Ali who was 5 years old only, and Abbas will take Ja'far. So Ja'far will grow in the household of Abbas, and Ali at 5 years old will become the adopted son of Muhammad as well, and he will grow up with his other sisters and in the Muhammad and Khadija household. And that was the start of a really special relation. You can see now Ali, from one, he is the cousin because he is the son of his uncle. From the second point, he's almost like a brother to him because they both grew up at the house of Abu Talib. Abu Talib is like a father to Muhammad. So in a way, he's also like a brother, but now he's also as a son because he's adopting him and raising him as a kid in his own household, so that he was also like a son. So now we have these two boys and we have four girls. Zaynab, the big one, Ruqayyah, Kulthum and Fatima, all growing together. Guess who will be also with them in this household? You remember Ayman, the nanny, the Muhammad nanny who was with him when he lost his mother on his first journey from Medina to Mecca. Now that lady stayed with him. He inherited her after his mother died. And when he moved to Khadija's home, he will free her and she will come and stay with them as well. And she will marry a man. He will give her to marriage to someone and she will have a boy called Ayman. So Ayman now, his own nanny also is living with them in the same household. And guess who is also visiting them? Halima as-Sa'diyah, his foster mother. She was now in the desert. She knows that now his foster son is like, you know, he's an abundant man. So every couple of years she will come to Mecca to visit them. And of course, they will honor her. They will give her gifts. They will give her money. There was one time that there was a drought in the desert. She came and Khadija will give her 30 sheep animals to take with her to the desert. She was still part of the family. She was still a woman that will visit them from time to time. And they were like so connected with their family. Safiya, the auntie of Muhammad, who was his same age, was married to the brother of Khadija too. So she will spend a lot of time in their home. And when her brother died, when her husband died, Khadija will also adopt her son, Al-Zubair, if you remember his name, which is later will become the father of Abdullah ibn Zubair, the husband of Asma bint Abi Bakr. So Zubair also grew up with them in that same household. And another lady as well, the sister of Khadija, will also come to visit them also often with her son Al-As. So you can see a big family life, all of them connecting together. Now Safiya is, so the sister of Khadija now coming, she will have a boy with her called Al-As ibn Rabi'a. Now that boy, he will start to get close to Zaynab, the daughter of Muhammad, the first daughter of Muhammad. So the sister of Khadija will then notice, and she will went to Khadija and will say, hey, would you give us Zaynab for marriage for Al-As? And Zaynab said, all right, Khadija consulted Muhammad. Muhammad, my sister wants to give Zaynab to her son. What do you think? And Muhammad said, let me consult with Zaynab. So Muhammad went to Zaynab and he said, Zaynab, looks like your cousin is interested. What do you think? And Zaynab will blush and she will smile. And then Muhammad knew that it was mutual, the interest was mutual. And so they gave Zaynab to her cousin for marriage. Now when Abu Talib heard this, he came to Muhammad. He's like, Muhammad, so you give your first daughter to the sister of Khadija, why don't you give your other daughters to us, your uncles? And he said, what do you have in mind? He said, come on, the sons of Abu Lahab, your uncle, they are in a marriage age. Why don't you give Ruqayyah and Kulthum to them? And Muhammad agreed, and he will then give Ruqayyah and Kulthum to the sons of his other uncle, Abu Lahab. We will hear Abu Lahab is he's his uncle, but later we will see he will become a famous enemy for Islam when the da'wah will start. But at this stage, his two boys will marry Ruqayyah and Kulthum. What else was going on in this household? Remember the nanny, Ayman? Now she lost her husband. He died. And she was now an older lady, and Muhammad loved her dearly. So he wanted her to be taken care of. So Muhammad will then say, oh, this lady is from the people of paradise. Whoever will marry her will marry a woman from paradise, in order to honor her and to make the man more wanting to marry her. So who would hear that? Zayd, his adopted boy, will hear that. And in order to honor Muhammad, but also to honor Ayman, who was also an Ethiopian lady from Ethiopia, so Zayd, the adopted son, will now marry Ayman, the nanny. So imagine that situation, and they will live together in the household of Muhammad and Khadija, and they will have the famous Usama ibn Zayd born in that household. That's why Muhammad loved dearly Usama, because Usama grew up in his household, was born in his household, and grew up in his household. And he used to call him Hubbu Rasulullah, and Zayd was also Hubb Rasulullah. So he loved them really dearly. And again, it was unusual at the time because of racism, because they both come from a different ethnicity. So you can see now a picture of a household. You can see now a picture of a house buzzing with children and love. And yes, I forgot to mention, Khadija had three kids as well living in this household. So imagine this house now. You have Khadija, you have Muhammad, you have the nanny married to the adopted son. Zayd is with them, adopted Ali, 4 ladies, each married to their cousins. You've got Ayman there. You've got Halima visiting them from time to time. Safiya and Zubair also visiting them. Zubair living with them. Really like a house full of harmony, of family, of connection. And imagine, if you think about it, imagine like Muhammad wouldn't have, if everything remained as normal, Muhammad would have grown up as like a comfortable granddad in Mecca, in a good household with money. They had money. Khadija was rich. Even he didn't have to work as hard at that time. Muhammad, he would have his daughters married to their cousins. He would have maybe more grandkids. He would live to become like a real comfortable granddad, surrounded by a big family, honored because he's a Qurashi, honored with his wife because she's also a Qurashi. That would what would the story would be if everything remained the same. Now, some people say that the destiny of Muhammad was to become a prophet. And maybe it's true, but in another way you could think about it is that his destiny was also to be just a Qurashi normal man. His normal destiny was actually to just be a guy who has a family, has money, has the status, and enjoy that until the rest of his life.